Evelyn Hart never expected danger to arrive in the form of a torn $100 bill. Most nights at the station passed in soft monotony, her booth glowing under harsh fluorescent lights. The steady rhythm of footsteps echoing through the concourse. Trains humming in and out like the world's heartbeat drifting past her. She sold tickets to strangers headed to cities she'd never seen. Their destinations more exciting than anything waiting for her after her shift. Quiet routines, a small apartment, a life that didn't ripple. But on this night, everything changed in the span of 3 seconds. A woman approached her window with frantic steps, her navy coat clinging to her as if the air itself were chasing her. Evelyn barely looked up before the woman slid something across the counter. Half $100 bill, torn jaggedly at the center. The handwriting scrawled across it looked rushed. Desperate. Ink smudged as though written with shaking hands. Train 918. Don't let him board. Betrayal. Evelyn's breath stalled. She lifted her gaze, searching the woman's face for context. For a plea. For anything that made sense. But the woman had already vanished into the crowd, swallowed by a wave of commuters heading toward their platforms. It was as if she had never been there. Evelyn held the torn bill between her fingers, her pulse beginning to climb. Was this a threat, a prank, a warning, and him who was him? She barely had time to process the thought before the entire atmosphere around her shifted. The station always buzzed with energy, but sometimes the flow of people parted on its own, like an invisible ripple of awareness passed through the room. A ripple now eased its way toward her booth. Subtle, at first, then unmistakable. Cassian Vale arrived at exactly the moment the torn bill warmed beneath her palm. He never rushed. He never blended in. He carried himself with an effortless authority that made everyone around him unconsciously step aside, even if they didn't realize why. Tall, sharply dressed in a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been cut from the night sky. He walked with a kind of contained quiet that felt more dangerous than shouting. His eyes were the first thing she noticed about him all those months ago, grey. Unreadable. Always scanning without appearing to look. Eyes that rarely softened. Never lingered. And never revealed what he might be thinking. But tonight, Evelyn felt those eyes land on her before he reached the window. He stopped in front of her booth, sliding cash toward her with the same practiced precision he did every Tuesday and Thursday. 1 ticket for the 918 to Briar Point. His voice was deep, smooth, carrying that strange calm he always had, like he knew he controlled the direction of every moment he walked into. But something about tonight felt different. A tension under the surface. A shifting wind. Her fingers brushed the cash, but hovered over the ticket she was supposed to hand him. The torn bill weighed in her palm like a live wire. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She didn't know him, he'd never said anything personal in the months she'd checked him in. But something heavy whispered through her instincts. The same whisper that had guided her since childhood. This matters. This moment matters. Your ticket, she murmured, her voice barely steady. And then before her courage had the chance to run away, she slid the torn bill beneath the ticket. The world seemed to narrow to the tiny pane of glass separating them. She watched his expression shift. Though not by much, a subtle tightening of his jaw. A flicker in his eyes. Like the first crack on the surface of a frozen lake. It was the most emotion she had ever seen from him. He didn't ask her a single question. He didn't react visibly. He simply took the ticket and the bill in one smooth motion. But he didn't walk toward the platform. He turned in the opposite direction. Evelyn's breath left her lungs as if she'd been holding it for hours. Minutes later, the station erupted in movement. Transit officers swept through the concourse with clipped urgency. Platform 7 closed. The board flashed a last-minute update. Train 918 cancelled. Mechanical inspection passengers groaned. Some swearing under their breath. Others huffed. Irritated by the inconvenience. But Evelyn's stomach dropped hard as understanding slid over her like ice water. The warning had been real. Someone had been in danger. Someone she had just somehow saved. And that someone had been Cassian Vale. She tried to steady herself the rest of her shift. But her mind kept circling back to the torn bill. To the woman in the navy coat. To Cassian's expression when he read the message. Had she overstepped? Had she helped? Had she just put herself in danger? The hours crawled until the last train rolled out. Until the crowds thinned, and cleaning crews replaced commuters. She stayed in her booth long after her replacement arrived late. Pretending she wasn't scanning every face, she was locking up her bag when she sensed him before she saw him. Cassian stood at the side of her booth, half in shadow. The overhead lights catching the sharp lines of his suit. His expression unreadable. The torn bill was nowhere in sight, but something colder. More focused. Burned in his eyes. She swallowed. You're still here. He stepped closer. Voice low. Meant only for her. Midnight. Platform 12. Evelyn stared at him. Her heart rattling hard against her ribs. His gaze locked onto hers with unwavering intensity. Come alone. Then he walked away, leaving her breathless, rooted in place, unable to process what had just happened. Her mind told her to go home. Call someone. Forget any of this happened. Pretend she'd never touched that torn bill. But her heart whispered something quieter. Far more dangerous, you're already part of this. And he knows it. The station felt different after he left. Colder. More vast. The empty stretches of marble and the slow echo of distant footsteps made her feel watched. Even though logically she knew she was alone. Evelyn spent the next 2 hours pacing her small break room and staring at the clock. Midnight felt both too close and impossibly far. She replayed everything in her mind: Cassian's arrival, the warning, the cancelled train, the cold certainty in his voice when he told her to come, 1,000 possibilities tangled together. But one thought rose above all the others. If he had ignored the warning, he might be dead. And she would forever carry the knowledge that she could have stopped it, but didn't. By 1145. Her decision was already made. Evelyn stepped out into the night air, her breath turning to thin fog as she crossed the nearly empty concourse. The station lights glowed dimmer during after-hours maintenance, casting long shadows across the polished floor. She forced her legs to keep moving as she descended toward platform 12. The silence pressed in heavier the farther she went, each footstep echoing in a tunnel that seemed far too quiet for a city that never slept. A warning scraped at the back of her mind. This was foolish. Reckless. Dangerous. She didn't know this man. She didn't know why someone wanted him dead. She didn't know what she was stepping into. But the torn bill had chosen her. The woman in the navy coat had chosen her. And Cassian had asked for her. When she reached the bottom of the steps, she saw him standing near the far end of the platform still. Silent. Waiting with the patience of someone who knew she'd come. Her pulse thundered. Her breath caught. Her feet refused to turn around. She didn't know it yet. But the moment she stepped toward him, her life tilted off the axis it had always clung to. Nothing after tonight would ever return to normal, no matter how desperately she wished it could. Because sometimes danger doesn't chase you. Sometimes you walk straight into it. And sometimes danger looks back at you, with grey eyes that feel like they could undo your entire world. Evelyn didn't know what she expected when she stepped onto platform 12 at midnight. But she knew it wasn't this. The station felt abandoned, almost haunted. During the day, Grand Station roared with life announcements echoing, crowds rushing, trains screaming into platforms. But now, it breathed in a different rhythm. A quieter one. A colder one. A rhythm that felt like it belonged to him. Cassian Vale stood near the far end of the platform, half hidden in shadow. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms now. exposing strong, corded muscles. His tie was gone, his collar loosened. He looked nothing like the polished businessman who purchased a ticket hours earlier. He looked like a man expecting violence, a man ready for it. Evelyn's footsteps slowed, her pulse thundering. She should have turned around. She shouldn't have come alone. But something about the way he held himself still as iron, focused as a blade, kept her moving forward. When she stopped a few feet away, he spoke without turning. "You came." His voice wasn't smooth like it had been at her booth. It was lower, rougher, like he'd been fighting a war in his own mind since he left her. Evelyn swallowed. "You told me to..." That made him turn. His eyes grey, cold, sharpened with exhaustion, locked onto hers. And in that moment she felt stripped bare, as if he could see the fear she was trying so hard to hide, and the defiance stubbornly layered beneath it. "The message," he said, his tone quiet, but lethal. "It didn't come from a stranger. It came from inside my organization." Evelyn's heart tightened. Inside? What organization? He held her gaze. And the silence that followed answered the question she was too afraid to ask. Cassian Vale wasn't simply wealthy, or powerful, or someone important enough to be targeted. He was all of that. And something far darker. "There are people who know my schedule," he continued. "People who know I take that train every week. People with access to information they shouldn't have." He exhaled once. Controlled. Like he was fighting to keep himself composed. "Someone planted a bomb on train 918. A bomb meant for me." Evelyn's legs felt suddenly weak. "Oh my God." He stepped closer. Not enough to touch her, but enough that she felt the heat of his presence. Felt the gravity pulling her toward him, whether she wanted it or not. "3 people connected to the message are dead," he said quietly. "Executed. The woman who handed it off, the man before her, and the one before him." Evelyn pressed a hand to her mouth. Horrified. She thought she'd stepped into a mystery, not a massacre. Why? Why would someone do this? Because betrayal is expensive. Cassian said, "But ambition is deadly. Someone wants me out of the way." His eyes hardened. "And they don't care who else dies in the process." The platform seemed to stretch and warp around her. The shadows thickened. The cold deepened. And the truth settled into her bones. She was standing in the middle of a world she had never been meant to see. "Why tell me any of this?" she whispered. "Because," he said, voice dropping lower, "you didn't know it. But you stepped into my world today. And I won't let my world kill you." Her breath caught. It was the first time his voice held something other than steel. The faintest trace of something warmer. Something dangerously close to compassion. But she barely had time to absorb it. Cassian moved suddenly, stepping past her. His hand brushing her arm just long enough to guide her. "We're not talking here. Come with me." She should have refused. She should have asked questions. She should have run. But the moment his fingers brushed her sleeve, the fear that had been crushing her chest loosened, not because she felt safe, but because something in him, something in his presence, told her that danger couldn't reach her while he stood between her and the world. So she followed him. The black car waiting outside wasn't marked, but it hummed with quiet power. The city passed in blurred streaks as Cassian stared out the tinted window. Saying nothing, his jaw was tight, the muscle at his temple flickering as though replaying the day's events. Evelyn watched him from the opposite seat, her hands twisting in her lap. Are you angry with me?" she asked finally. Her voice a fragile whisper. His eyes slid toward her, slow and intent. "No. You seem like you are. I'm angry that someone used you," he said. "Dragged you into this. Put you in their crossfire. That is not something I tolerate. Used me, she echoed. I don't understand. You were the last link in a chain of deaths. Evelyn, he said. The traitor doesn't know what you saw, or what you know, which means they might come after me. She finished, her voice barely audible. He didn't confirm it. He didn't have to. Why didn't you just tell the police? She asked. His gaze hardened. Because the police can't touch the man behind this. But I can. Something in the way he said it, calm, absolute, made her realize the depth of the world he lived in. Not shadows, not rumors, something far more dangerous. Where are we going? She asked. A safe place. He said. You're not going home tonight. I didn't agree to. You don't have protection. He said, cutting her off. No encryption. No safeguards. Your phone is a tracking device. Your apartment isn't reinforced. Anyone could walk through your door. His tone softened just once. If you go home, you won't survive until morning. Evelyn felt cold all over. She hated that he was right. She hated even more that a part of her, an honest. The frightened part felt relief at the idea of him protecting her. The penthouse wasn't what she expected. It wasn't flashy or gaudy. No marble statues or gold accents. It was clean. Modern. Impossibly tall windows, stretching from floor to ceiling. Overlooking the city like a quiet god watching from above. Evelyn stood in the living room. Arms wrapped around herself. Why are you helping me? Cassian loosened his wrists. Slow and deliberate. Because you didn't hesitate today, he said. Most people panic. Most people freeze. You didn't. I wasn't brave. She muttered. I was terrified. Being terrified and acting anyway. He said. Is the definition of brave. She didn't expect him to say that. She didn't expect her throat to tighten, or her chest to warm, in a way that made her feel unsteady. He didn't expect her reaction either. Something flickered in his eyes, interest. Maybe. Or curiosity. Or something deeper he didn't want to name. The moment stretched between them soft. Quiet. Full of a heat neither of them acknowledged. But it broke the moment the door opened. Cassian's second in command entered, dark-haired, sharp-eyed, breathless. We have footage. Cassian stiffened. Show me. The man placed a tablet on the table. Surveillance footage flickered across the screen, grainy but clear enough to reveal faces. And there he was. Lysander Crow, Cassian's lieutenant. His friend for 10 years. Impossible. Cassian muttered. But even his denial sounded hollow. He watched the exchange on the platform. The second in command said, and he's already moving. He has men with him. Evelyn felt the air shift. And Evelyn Cassian asked, he saw her with you? The man replied. Cassian inhaled sharp. Quiet. Deadly. How long? 10? Maybe 15 minutes. Cassian turned to Evelyn with a look she couldn't decipher. We need to move. He reached for her arm. But she stepped back on instinct, her voice shaking but firm. No. It froze him. No, he repeated. As if he wasn't used to the word. You're telling me someone wants me dead? She said. You're telling me I might not even make it through the night. And your brilliant plan is to shove me in a room while you go fight a war, yes? He said. Without hesitation. Well, that's not happening. Her voice trembled. But her spine stayed straight. If he wants me dead, she said softly. Hiding won't save me. End it tonight. Cassian. End it so we both get to breathe tomorrow. Cassian stared at her, as if she had just cracked open a part of him he didn't let anyone see. Evelyn's courage shouldn't have impressed him. It should have infuriated him. But it didn't. It affected him. Deeply. more than he wanted to admit. "Evelyn," he began, his voice rougher now. "You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it," she whispered. "Explain why I should hide while you bleed for me." The silence that followed was thick, heavy, charged. He took one slow step toward her, then another, until she could feel the heat radiating off him. When he spoke, his voice wasn't cold anymore. It was something else, something she felt down her spine. "I don't bleed for anyone," he said. A beat. Until today. Evelyn's breath hitched, and that was the moment Cassian Vale realized this woman, this quiet ticket clerk who should have been invisible to his world, wasn't invisible at all. She was the one variable he couldn't control, and the one he no longer wanted to. Evelyn had never heard silence as loud as the silence inside the panic room. It was the kind that pressed against the walls, the kind that made her heartbeat sound like gunfire in her own ears. She watched the monitors with trembling fingers, her breath shallow as the camera feed flickered between angles of the penthouse. Cassian stood in the center of the living room, still as stone, waiting for a man he once trusted with his life. The elevator indicator blinked on the screen. One floor, then another, then another. Evelyn pressed her palm against the cold metal wall, forcing herself not to panic. Cassian had ordered her to stay inside this room, no matter what happened. He had said it like a command, like a vow. But now that the moment was here, her fear wasn't for herself. It was for him. The elevator doors opened with a muted flash on the monitor. Lysander Crow stepped into view. He was taller than she expected, tall, sharp-featured, dressed in dark clothing that blended with the shadows like he was born from them. 3 armed men followed behind him. Their movements were smooth, efficient, like they'd rehearsed this. Lysander smiled. But it wasn't a friendly smile, more like someone savoring a victory he thought impossible to lose. "Cassian," he said. And hearing his voice through the panic room, speakers sent a chill down Evelyn's spine. "I knew you'd be awake." Cassian faced him without moving. "You planted a bomb meant to kill me. You weren't supposed to cancel the train." Lysander replied easily. "You were supposed to board it. The warning shouldn't have reached you." Evelyn felt her stomach twist. He knew. He knew about the message. He knew someone had tried to warn Cassian, and he'd killed every person who carried it. Lysander took a few slow steps forward. And then, he added, his gaze flicking briefly toward the hallway that concealed the panic room. "You went and involved the girl." Evelyn froze. Cassian didn't. His voice dropped to something quiet and deadly. "Leave her out of this." Lysander laughed softly. "You never were good at separating business and sentiment." "I don't have sentiment," Cassian said coldly. But Evelyn knew that wasn't true. She'd seen the softening in his eyes. She'd heard it in his voice. She'd felt it in the careful way he'd said her name. And in that moment, she was certain Lysander saw it too. Which made her dangerous. Disposable. A target. The confrontation snapped like a wire pulled too tight. Lysander lifted his gun. Cassian moved faster. Gunfire erupted. Explosive. Echoing through the penthouse like thunder. Evelyn slapped both hands over her mouth to smother a scream as the battle unfolded on the monitors. Cassian's movements were controlled. Preciso. Lethal. He didn't waste a single step. He didn't hesitate. In less than a minute, the confrontation was over. Lysander lay on the floor, unmoving, his men disarmed. It subdued. Incapacitated. The monitors flickered as smoke drifted into frame, blurring the edges. Cassian remained standing, breathing hard. His shirt darkened with blood, some his, some not. He stood there for a long moment, shoulders rising and falling, the weight of betrayal settling around him like a cloak made of lead. Then he turned toward the hallway camera. "Get Evelyn." Those were his first words after killing a man he once called brother. Not instructions to clean up. Not orders to secure the scene. Not commands to eliminate remaining threats. Just her. Only her. A click sounded behind Evelyn, and the panic room door unlatched. She stepped out slowly, her knees weak, her heart lodged somewhere in her throat. Cassian stood just a few feet away, framed by the dim light spilling from the monitors. His eyes found hers instantly. There was no armor there anymore. No icy mask. No impenetrable calm. For the first time, he looked human, exhausted, wounded not on his body, but somewhere deeper. "Are you hurt?" he asked. The question was so unexpected that Evelyn almost laughed or cried, she couldn't tell which. I'm fine." A voice shook. "Are you Cassian?" Didn't answer. He didn't need to. She could see the tension in his posture. The grief carved into the lines around his eyes. Lysander hadn't just been a traitor. He had been a part of Cassian's life. And Cassian had been forced to end him. He stepped closer, stopping when they were only a breath apart. "You no longer work at the station," he said, voice steady but gentler than she'd ever heard it. "Your resignation has already been processed." Evelyn blinked. "What I never resigned." "You did today." His tone softened. "Your old life isn't safe for you anymore. And I will not let anyone use you to get to me again." Her chest tightened. The ground felt like it was falling away beneath her feet. "You erased my life. I protected it." He corrected, quietly. She opened her mouth to protest. To argue. To demand how he could make decisions that huge, without asking her, but the words dissolved as he raised a hand. He didn't touch her right away. His fingers hovered just inches from her cheek, as though waiting for permission, as if giving her an opening to step back. She didn't. His thumb brushed her cheek gently, almost reverently. It was a touch so soft, so hesitant, that she felt the air leave her lungs. This was not the Cassian Vale the world saw. This was not the man who spoke with guns and moved through danger as if it bowed to him. This was a man who was terrified of hurting her, terrified of losing control, terrified of wanting something he had no right to want. "I should have walked away from you today," he murmured, his hand cupping her jaw like she was something fragile he wasn't allowed to break. "But I didn't." Her heartbeat stuttered. "And now," he whispered. "I can't." Evelyn swallowed, overwhelmed by the weight of his honesty, by the warmth of his touch, by the way his gaze held so much conflict and desire and restraint all at once. "Cassian," she breathed. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if just hearing his name on her lips was enough to undo him. But she forced herself to step back, not because she didn't want him close, but because the world he belonged to was not built for softness, not built for people like her. "Give me time," she whispered. "And don't decide my life for me." He opened his eyes, and something in the way he looked at her, steady, unflinching, fiercely protective, told her he understood. "Time is yours," he said softly, "but protection is mine." It was the closest thing to a promise he could make. She left with his most trusted driver, just before dawn. The city still draped in shadows, as the car pulled away from Cassian's building. Evelyn watched the skyline blur past the window, watched the first hints of orange creep across the horizon. Her phone buzzed. A single text. From C. "Are you safe?" Her breath caught. She typed her response carefully. "Here," fingers trembling. "Yes." "Are you?" The reply came instantly. "Now that I know where you are, yes." The sun broke over the city in a slow, golden bloom. Evelyn stared at his final message. Her heart caught between fear and something dangerously close to hope. Whatever tomorrow held, whatever this strange, intense, impossible connection between them was becoming, it wasn't over. Not even close. Fade out. And if you enjoyed this story, if Cassian and Evelyn's world pulled you in, even for a moment, then don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves a good, slow-burn mafia romance. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and whether you want to see part 2 of their story. Your support helps these stories come alive. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.